Hello everyone, welcome in the next week of the SWAM course Anatomy of Flowering Plants. I am Dr. Shachi Singh, Assistant Professor of Botany in Banaras Hindu University. In the previous classes, we were discussing about the internal organization of cell, and now we will move on to a more higher organization, that is tissue. In this, we will deal about different types of tissue, their structure as well as their function. Now, in the first lecture, we will talk about a very special class of tissue, that is the meristematic tissue. Now, starting with defining tissues. Basically, tissues are a group of cells which have common origin and they perform a common function. Now, their structure could be similar or they could be dissimilar. In plants, basically these tissues are characterized into or divided into two groups, which is meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. In this, meristematic tissues are the dividing tissues. That means they have the ability to divide and their sole function is to divide and give rise to new tissues which will finally differentiate into different types of tissues to perform different functions in a plant. Now, they are undifferentiated cells, that is, they are not specialized and they are just keep on dividing. The next one is the permanent tissue. And permanent tissue are those tissue which have lost their ability of division and they have acquired a permanent structure and a permanent function and they are specialized to perform different tasks in a plant organ. So, they have permanent structure and function. Now, permanent tissue also could be divided into two types, simple tissue and complex tissue. Now, simple tissues are one which have only one cell type. That means only one type of cells, means their structure are almost similar and they perform a common function. And in simple tissues, we have parenchyma, collenchyma and sclerenchyma. So, all these tissues we will deal separately, we will study their structure as well as their function, in which collenchyma and parenchyma are basically living tissues, whereas sclerenchyma is dead tissue. Okay. Coming to the complex tissue, in this we have xylem and phloem, and they are called as complex tissue because they are made up of more than one cell types. Okay. Now, in xylem, different groups of tissues are combined together. In this, basically 4 different types of xylem cells are recognized. They are tracheids, vessels, xylem fibers and xylem parenchyma. Similarly, in phloem also it is made up of different types of tissue. Now, moving on to the topics which will be covered in this entire module. Now, in this complete week, we will talk about meristematic tissues. Okay, what are meristematic tissues and how they are classified, and we will talk about special type of meristem, apical meristem, which is responsible to form the primary growth of the plant, in which we will talk about shoot apical meristem as well as root apical meristem, and we will also discuss different theories which lead to the organization of root apical meristem as well as shoot apical meristem. Now, coming to the meristematic tissues. Now, as discussed before, meristematic tissues are living tissues. Okay, their purpose is to divide and give rise to new cells which will finally differentiate to give rise to different types of tissues. So basically these are undifferentiated mass of cells. So we can say that these are undifferentiated mass of stem cells. Okay. The term meristem was coined by Nageli in 1858. Cells which are present in the plant is not dividing every time. The division is restricted to certain areas which are known as meristem. Now these meristem will contain those undifferentiated cell which will give rise to new cell types. Now these meristem, the cells which are present in these meristem are thin walled and they are living. So definitely they have to be living because they are continuously dividing. Their walls will be thin. Basically they will be made up of primary walls only. Primary cell wall. This also, as we have discussed in the cell wall section, that primary cell wall is present in every living cell, whereas secondary cell wall is found in dead tissues, because secondary cell wall is very thick, and when the cell wall is added over primary tissue, the lumen of the cell gets reduced, the protoplasmic or the living content get reduced, and finally cells die. So they actually lose their ability to divide. So a dividing cell will always have a thin cell wall which will be basically made up of primary cell wall. They will contain dense cytoplasm because they are dividing, so they require lot of nutrients, lot of reactions are going on, lot of metabolic activity is going on, catabolism, anabolism, synthesis of many molecules. They require lot of proteins, they require carbohydrates because they are dividing. So lot of material is required, various organelles are required, large number of organelles are required because they need mitochondria also because energy requirement is very high, then endoplasmic reticulum for synthesis and secretion of so many proteins and many other substances. So those things are required. Similarly, prominent nucleus. Now nucleus is also very active because they are synthesizing DNA, because for cell division you require that DNA should be replicated and duplicated so that it could be divided into the dividing cells. So these things, RNA synthesis is going on, protein synthesis is going on. So all these things, because of all these things, the cytoplasm becomes dense and become prominent. Divide by mitotic division and give rise to daughter cells. Now vacuoles are very small in the dividing cells. Generally when the cells are dividing, they are very small because they don't require vacuole as such, because vacuoles are basically storage organelles and they are not there for a longer period of time. They will divide, so they don't require anything to store for a longer period of time. So either vacuoles are small or they are altogether absent. It is metabolically active, that we have discussed. Now cells are isodimetric. Cells basically they don't have a very unique cell. They might be spherical, they might be oval or polygonal in shape with very less intercellular spaces, which is almost absent in meristematic cells. Isodimetric means they are not actually spherical, but their diameters are almost equal from all sides. Okay, so they definitely they are not exactly spherical objects, but we say isodimetric to those things. Cells are undifferentiated. Definitely we cannot group them into like they are parenchymatous or collenchymatous or sclerenchymatous. So they all are undifferentiated and have the ability to give rise to all different cell types. Now these meristematic cells have the ability to develop into any tissue or organ of a plant or even into an entire organ. Okay, so these types of cells are known as totipotent. Okay, they are totipotent stem cells, but when they differentiate, they form derivatives. Okay, they form different derivatives which will finally give rise to different organs. So those derivatives are not exactly totipotent. We can call them as pluripotent, giving rise to a particular organ. Now these meristematic tissues are present on growing parts of the plant, such as tips of the root and stem. I have told you before that meristematic region is not present everywhere, means every part of the cell is not dividing. So this division or this meristematic zone is present at certain points or at certain location in the plant, but generally at tips of root and stem these meristematic tissue are found. Now coming to the classification of meristem. Now these meristematic tissues are classified depending on different parameters or different characters. So basically different groups are there in which we can classify them. On the first basis is the position, means meristematic tissues are classified on the basis of position, means in the plant where these meristematic tissues are located. So on that basis they are classified as apical meristem, intercalary meristem and lateral meristem. Now apical meristem says that it is found on the apical location, it is found on the tips of growing points of root and shoot, and this brings about increase in length of the plant. Now when we talk about a plant, suppose this is the shoot part and this is the root of this plant. So at growing tips, okay, it will have branches also, and in that also these growing tips are there, okay, and at tips of roots these apical meristem is located, apical meristem. This is the, you can say that shoot apical meristem, and this is the root apical meristem. Now this is actually responsible, these meristems which are present at the ends of the plant, these are responsible to increase the height of the plant, okay. This is very important feature of apical meristem. This will increase the height of the plant, as well as in the shoot also they will give rise to lateral organs like leaf, branches, axillary bud. So all these things will come out from the shoot, this apical meristem. Now in this case also the cells will be undifferentiated, they will be densely packed, they will be high dense cytoplasm and prominent nucleus, and they will be in a very high dividing phase. Basically this apical meristem will give rise to primary growth of the plant. So that also we will discuss, that what is primary growth and what is secondary growth. On that basis also classification is based. Now coming to the next meristem, which is intercalary meristem, okay. This also, suppose this is the shoot of the plant, this intercalary meristem you will find in the shoot of the plant, okay. You have, so how you differentiate shoot? That it will have nodes and internodes, okay. Nodes are the point from which leaves will arise, branches will arise, okay. So suppose leaves are coming out from the nodes. Actually intercalary meristem is not found in root region, okay, because in root you will not find nodes and internodes. So in this region, okay, in this is the internode and this is the node. So at the base of the, you can say at the top of the node or at the base of the internode, you will find the intercalary meristem. Okay. So at this point, and this is also responsible to increase the height of the plant. So that means apical meristem is also increasing the height, whereas intercalary meristem is also increasing the height of the plant. Now how this intercalary meristem would have originated? See, actually it is considered that it is part of apical meristem only. Now when apical meristem, which is, suppose it is present here, when it is growing and it is increasing the height of the plant, some of the undifferentiated cells of this meristem are left behind and they are trapped in between permanent tissues. Okay, so intercalary meristem are basically part of apical meristem, part of undifferentiated, unspecialized growing and dividing cell, which are left behind, and the rest of the meristem continues to grow, and they continue to form permanent tissue, and these meristem get trapped in between these permanent tissues. Okay, and one more thing is there, that sometimes these intercalary meristem could also originate from the permanent tissue, because that we will learn later, that how sometimes the permanent tissue also gets de-differentiated and they again regain their capability of division, and again they start dividing. So the theory is also there that they could also originate in that way. Now, these intercalary meristem, you will see that it is more prominent in monocots. You would have observed various phenomena that in monocot, like grasses, they are monocot plant. Okay, so it has intercalary meristem, it has apical meristem. You would have observed that when suppose a grass is there and it is eaten up by some animal, suppose cow or some goat has eaten those grasses from the top, and by that process they have actually removed the apical meristem, and only the leftover portion of the leaves are there. In those grasses, the leftover leaves are present, okay, and apical meristem is completely removed. So in that cases also you would have observed that grasses are still growing. Okay, the next season you will see a fully grown grass. So it is because of the presence of that intercalary meristem that the grasses are growing. These intercalary meristem also help the plant. Sometimes the cereal plants, suppose with heavy rain or heavy wind condition, they fall on the ground. So this intercalary meristem actually helps them to become erect. Okay, they grow and provide support, and because of that, many of the cereal plants, they will grow erect. In bamboo stem also, you would have seen bamboo have very long stems. So in that cases also, those stems become very long because of the presence of this intercalary meristem. Now coming to lateral meristem. Now we were talking about the increase in length or height of the plant, which is in which apical meristem and intercalary meristem plays a very important role. But what about the diameter of the plant or the girth of the plant? See, many plants are very tall. Okay, we observe like monocot plants, like many wheat and stem, and wheat is there, rice is there, maize is there. They are not very tall plants, they have very thin stem. Even some herbaceous plants which are very small and they are not growing to a great height. But you would have seen very big trees like mango trees there, peepal trees there, banyan trees there, they have very big size. Okay, so if only the plant is increasing in height, then you can imagine that how this thing will support the growth of that plant. Okay, something at the base should also be there that should also increase to support the growing size of the plant. Okay, so this thing is brought about by lateral meristem. Lateral meristem increases the diameter of the plant or girth of the plant. Now where this lateral meristem is present, basically two types are there, which is vascular cambium and core cambium. Now these lateral meristems are present on the sides of the plant. Okay, they are present on the sides of the plant. Okay, so now how you will actually observe it here? Suppose this stem, you cut them transversely. Okay, you cut a section of this stem at this particular location and you observe it from the top. You will see that different layers will be there in circles. Okay, and in circles you will also see that all we will discuss. Outer layer will be epidermis. Then you will have an inner mass of cell known as cortex, which will surround the vascular tissues. Okay, different orientations are there, different forms are there. So all that we will discuss. Now in this vascular region also, if you think about this vascular region, vascular bundles are there, lot of vascular bundles. Now vascular bundles are basically those which conduct water and food particles. They are xylem and phloem tissues which constitute the vascular bundle. So, that all we will discuss. So, in between this vascular bundle, you will find a lateral meristem. Okay. So, this vascular bundle will be connected by a vascular cambium. Okay. So, this cambium, lateral meristem is also known as cambium. So, this cambium, which will actually form a circle, and they will increase cell on either side, increasing the volume of the plant, okay, increasing the diameter of the plant. Similarly, in the vascular tissue, you will also see a cambium which is present in the cortex region, which is known as core cambium. How it will develop, that all we will deal in the coming next classes. So, this will also increase, will help in increasing the diameter of the plant. Now, next is how this meristem is classified is on the basis of origin, means from which point of plant growth these meristem would have arisen. So, on that basis, first is promeristem, primary meristem and secondary meristem. Now, promeristem arise from the embryonic tissue. As soon as the zygote starts developing into embryonic cells, this promeristem arises and they will give rise to primary meristem. That means the primary tissues will form promeristem. Okay, so as soon as the primary tissues slightly get modified from promeristem, it will be called as primary meristem. And this promeristem is also found on the growing tips of the plant, and finally they will give rise to primary meristem. Now, this also we have discussed that primary meristem is the shoot and root. Apical meristem is also known as primary meristem because it will give rise to primary body of the cell. Okay. Now, coming to the primary meristem, they will also emerge from the embryonic tissue only, means as soon as the meristem is formed, promeristem is formed, it will immediately give rise to primary meristem. So, this primary meristem will be there in the embryonic tissue and they will persist throughout the life of the plant. And these are also found on the tips of root and shoot, as well as on leaf primordia, the place from where leaf is emerging. So, all that places primary meristem will emerge and they will give rise to permanent tissues. Now, these primary meristem will also be composed of actively dividing cell, undifferentiated cell, and which will be thin walled with the dense cytoplasm, prominent nucleus. Okay. Now, coming to secondary meristem, now cambium is also known as, or lateral meristem is also known as secondary meristem. Secondary meristem. Now, this secondary meristem is not present from the beginning of the plant growth. It is not present in the embryonic tissue, and it arises when plant has attained a certain degree of growth and it has formed permanent tissues, because the secondary meristem will arise from permanent tissue. Now, this also we will discuss later, that how some tissues, like how some permanent tissues have the ability to again de-differentiate and form and function as meristem, giving rise to new cells. So, the example of secondary meristem is core cambium that I have discussed. Then in this, interfascicular cambium is an example of secondary meristem, that also we will discuss in detail. Now, as in the previous slide I told you that there are vascular bundles. Okay, in vascular bundles you will find meristem. Okay, you will see cambium. So, this cambium is actually primary meristem because it is present from the beginning of the cell, and when this secondary growth has to occur, when the size of the cell has to increase, this meristem will be combined by some more cells which will originate from the permanent tissues, and they are known as interfascicular cambium. So, that also we will discuss in detail, that what are these types of cambium. Now, next, on the basis of function also differentiation is there. We call them, basically this is on the basis of function. Primary meristem, you can say, is meristem is divided into different groups, Like they are divided into protoderm, which will give rise to epidermis. Okay, this meristem will form epidermis. Then procambium. Okay, procambium will give rise to vascular tissue. Okay, vascular tissue. In this vascular tissue, you have xylem, phloem, and cambium. Okay, so cambium, actually the cambium which will give rise to secondary tissue originates from procambium as well as primary xylem and primary phloem. So that also we will discuss, that how this procambium converts itself into cambium and forms xylem and phloem, and later on this cambium will give rise to secondary xylem and secondary phloem. And then you will have ground meristem, which will form the layers of cortex, pith, and rest of the components of a plant. Now, on the basis of plane of division, this meristem is divided, means how the cells are dividing. Now, actually, on that basis, you have mass meristem, you have rib or file meristem, and plate meristem. See, actually, when plant has to divide, there are different ways in which they divide. One way is said to be periclinal division, and the other way is anticlinal, although there are many other ways also, but we will discuss here these two ways, because on that basis different meristem is categorized. Anticlinal. Okay, periclinal means parallel to the axis. Suppose this is the growing point, suppose this is the stem and this is the growing axis. Okay, and in this one cell is present here. Okay, one cell is present. Now, if it divides periclinally, okay, it will form one cell on the outer side and one cell on the inner side. Okay, and it will increase the volume of the cell. Periclinal means parallel to the surface. Now, parallel to the surface, this whole cell is dividing, so it will form one cell on this side and one cell on other side. So, it will actually increase the diameter, it will increase the volume of the cell, and when this cell divides anticlinally, it is not increasing, it is increasing cell on this side and cell on this side. So, it will actually increase the surface of the cell, means boundary of the cell will, more number of cells will increase here. So, you can say it will increase the surface of the cell. Okay. So, on that basis, this division is there. You have mass meristem, those meristem which are dividing in all planes, resulting in an increase in volume. See, when cell is dividing periclinally as well as anticlinally, then the total volume of the cell will increase. Now, it is found in growing embryos because they have to develop organs all around. Then in endosperm also this type of meristem is found, as well as in various other tissues and organs of a fully developed plant. Rib meristem in cells dividing at right angle to the longitudinal axis of the plant. Okay, so this is the angle of the plant, and this is, they are dividing, actually it is periclinal division. Okay, parallel to the surface, periclinal, in which they are dividing, this is the longitudinal axis, and on the right angle to this longitudinal axis they are dividing. So, the rib meristem divides in that way, and they will give rise to cortex and pith of the root. And in plate meristem, it will form a plate-like surface. So, it is dividing in anticlinal fashion like in leaf plate. So, it will increase the surface and not thickness of the plant. So, this is all about the different classification of meristem. So, on that basis, different classification has been formed on the basis of origin. So, in the next class, we will talk about another important aspect of meristematic tissue. We will talk about apical meristem, and which is responsible for increasing the height of the plant, and this is one of the most important meristem which is present in the plant cell, which is present in the plant organism, and give rise to most of the parts of the plant. So, thank you for today.